Welcome back to Chicago Sports Update, and this is Matt, and I would like to apologize for the lengthy delay in an episode getting out. Let's just say life has been rather busy with work, home, commuting, and not leaving much time for this. So I'm coming to you the first chance that I possibly could do so, and that was Father's Day 2015. So thank you for allowing us to get that, not necessarily a break, not that we necessarily needed it, but unfortunately it's just an absence. I guess that's the best way that we can qualify it right now. So I'm coming to you less than a week after the Blackhawks have returned as champions of the NHL season, and 3 and 6 years, Gary Bettman decided to call it a dynasty. I think everyone else was already ready to call it a dynasty, at least here in Chicago, because, well, in this era, that being the Stanley Cup era, it's much more difficult to do so, and prolonged periods of sustained success, going to the conference finals 6 out of 7 years, I believe that was the case, and winning the Stanley Cup Championship, or winning the Stanley Cup, 3 out of the last 6 years. That's very, very impressive, and I'm very happy about that. Yankees-esque for what I grew up in, for the era of sports, but I'm very happy that that's the case, and this championship certainly feels different. This, to me, is dominance. This, to me, is the experience, the experience factor of the team, and I'm very grateful for it. I have never felt anything like this before in any of the other teams that I really cheered for. I'm a little bit too young to really understand the Jordan era. Yes, I understand his greatness in retrospect, but seemingly in the NBA, if you have the two of the best players in the game, you're going to win a lot of the time, majority of the time. Ask that with Magic and Kareem, Larry Bird out there in Boston, and the previous year of the Jordan Bulls, and certainly with the Kobe Lakers. Whatever you can't necessarily call it the Popovich Spurs, I guess is the best way to put that. And anywhere that LeBron goes, you certainly have the great chance to win. So it's been nice. It's been very nice to have to have the team get the recognition that I genuinely believe that it deserves. Mostly because I think, unfortunately, a lot of hockey fans and most hockey eyes are centered around the East and the Eastern Conference, and to me, that's just it's just a damn shame that that's the case, and I don't particularly care for that Eastern Conference bias. I guess Tampa was close, but they never won, and they just didn't win when they had the chance. They just didn't execute when they had the chance in the 6 games, and I'm not. Boy, it feels like, okay, they're just maybe. I don't know if Tampa's that far off, I guess. I don't know how well they would stack up against the Ducks. Had the Ducks beaten the Blackhawks in the Western Conference Finals. But I'd like to think that a lot of these other Eastern teams would not have had a snowball's chance in hell. Just wouldn't have had a prayer. You look at Montreal. Yeah, they have a great goalie. With Carey Price, but they don't have the offensive talent. Not that this last Stanley Cup final was offensively driven, but they just didn't have it. And I would have liked to have thought that Anaheim or Chicago would have been able to score at will over over Montreal. I never thought that the New York Rangers were adept at scoring. I know that they were a President's Cup winning team. Well, we've seen how well that's worked out for Vancouver previously. Or other teams. I believe the Blackhawks won the President's Cup, I think, when their last championship in 2013. But it doesn't necessarily guarantee you success in the postseason. And just because you beat up on a weaker conference throughout the season, which is what I believe Tampa did, they outscored. They were the highest scoring team in the East. All well and good for them. Congratulations, that's great. But you weren't playing the East, you were playing the West. And the West is where the big dogs play. Anaheim, I believe, certainly, to me, they had a soft West, very soft Pacific to whoop up on, and did so. Rightfully so. It was a dogfight in the Central, and deservingly so. There's some great teams, some great coaches, and it was it was the foraging process that the Blackhawks had to go through the Central. They did what they could against Central Division foes like St. Louis and Nashville. They had pretty good regular season success against all the three opponents that they did have to go through, specifically in the Predators, the Wild, as well as the Ducks in the end. So whatever the regular season's worth, okay, it's kind of turning. I shouldn't say it's kind of turning into the NBA. It is turning into the NBA. Home ice advantage doesn't really seem to have much weight to it. Teams are able to win anywhere, and we saw that with both sides, both Tampa and Chicago. They were able to win games at home and away. So it doesn't really matter. No one really had home ice advantage. So Blackhawks ended up getting it back in consecutive games. So I'm very grateful, and I'm very, very proud of this 2015 Blackhawks team. A lot of changes are coming up, though. The new year is going to be starting with the draft, or right after the draft, I believe. With after the draft free agency, we'll kick that off. I know that's not necessarily that's probably the biggest difference between them and the NFL, but either way. So the NHL year is ending, and teams are looking to unload contracts, dump money, because the cap is hard and fast. So Patrick Sharp seems to be the biggest name to be going and finding a new team through the trade market, and hopefully they are able to garner some good picks to get him in return. At this point in time, as long as if they got even a first round, second round, heck, if they even got 2 second rounds over consecutive years for him, that'd be great. I would gladly take that. I have no problem stockpiling draft picks. I love that. I think there's plenty of teams that could use his sort of caliber of scoring, and sure, he's no spring chicken, but he's a very good and very consistent veteran. And I think it's very difficult to find these days, especially outside of free agency. And this free agent class doesn't seem to be anything like a bunch of world beaters or anything, not anyone that's really going to make a difference. So he's one name that could probably end up going. Brad Richards takes a pay cut. That'd be great. I'm all for it. Diminishing skills, all that sort of fun stuff, that'd be fine with me. Johnny Oduya, defenseman for Blackhawks. I expect him to be gone. Great player, but he played his guts out and deserves a pay raise. Fine, well, and good. You're just not going to get it here. So that's one thing that I think we can all say as Blackhawk fans for here right now. You're good, but find greener pastures. Go get paid. No problem with that. Because right now the biggest priority is making sure that Brandon Saad is locked up for the long haul. He's going to be one of I think he's going to end up being better than Patrick Sharp, and maybe it's a recency effect with Patrick Sharp. But I certainly like to think that I'd rather have a much younger version and younger or potentially better, version of Patrick Sharp. I think anyone would take that, and I'm glad to lock that up long term. Your defensemen are fine, and the biggest problem is that the pay bump for Tays and Kane is coming, and okay, that's fine, but they had to do what they had to do, and that's all fine, well, and good. Your defense is locked up for the time being, your defensive core, that being Hjalmarsson, Keith, and Seabrook. And you got plenty of talent coming up from Rockford to be able to replace Oduya, Roosevelt, and any of the other. Oh, and Kimo Timonen, who finally won his Stanley Cup, even though he probably played in only a handful of games for Chicago, but he ended up winning. So winning it. So I'm very happy about that. And there's. Going around the other teams, the Bulls ended up firing Tom Thibodeau, which I can understand it. I get it. I'm not going to play stupid. I get that. But I think there's bigger problems with the organization on the other side of the UC. So I would like to. I'd say it's very frustrating for a sports fan because you have this cronyism that's going on and just running wild with the Bulls. And it's not fun. It's diluting everything else that's going on. To add up all the stupid internal political drama that's going on with the Bulls, there's other problems. And the one problem being Jimmy Butler. You have just dead weight. And I think that's right now the best thing that we can categorize Derrick Rose at. He's just dead weight. He's a hollow political icon right now, sports political icon right now in Chicago. I don't know. For those, he just seems it's over for him. It's not. He doesn't have it. He doesn't. And I don't know if he was really ever a killer or had that sort of cold-blooded basketball assassin that I guess basketball fans such as myself who saw that in Kobe, who saw that in Jordan. I just don't think we see that with Rose. I don't think we're ever going to see that. I don't think we're ever going to see the talent that the flashes of greatness that we ever saw with Derrick Rose. I think that's gone by the wayside and never to be repeated again. So you have a bunch of dead money with Derrick Rose. And Jimmy Butler has played well enough to deserve max money. I can get behind that. Local radio was talking about, is he, though, a max player? And I don't agree with the fact that he would be considered a max talent. One doesn't necessitate the other. Max player doesn't max money doesn't mean max player. Max player, reserve that for someone like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, or Russell Westbrook, players like that. Transcendent players, once-in-a-generation type players. You're just not going to see that with Derrick Rose or Jimmy Butler. So I just feel like the Bulls organization is going to be completely content with playing, elementary basketball, just college ball. Be defensive, play a lot of minutes, not really have the ability to score at will or without having to cycle through 3 to 4 passes, 5 passes in some cases. I just don't think it's there. I just don't believe that the offensive ability, mindset, execution is out there. Fred Hoiberg is now in charge of the bench. He's the new Bulls coach. He comes over from Iowa State, but he's also a crony of the Garpax machine that runs the front office. And I don't think that's healthy for the Bulls. I just don't. And unfortunately, I think that cronyism is running through the White Sox organization. The White Sox made some strides to get back to 500 in the middle of May, and ever since then decided to just flush themselves down the toilet. They're just awful. Just absolutely awful. I'm doing this show as they're now on a 2-game win streak. I hesitate to call it a streak, more like back-to-back wins. Coincidence, maybe. So you're not seeing me get too excited about that. But there's a lot of problems with this team, and they're rather systemic. It's not just a problem with this makeup of the roster here for this 2015 campaign, but it's an organizational problem. The White Sox have an uncanny ability to identify tremendous pitching talent and develop pitching talent and get that ready to execute. Look at Chris Sale, look at Carlos Rodon. They even drafted another new pitcher who's, Fuller, I think is his last name. Christian Fuller, I think that's his name. Ends up being a first-round draft pick for the White Sox at number 7, and he ends up being he was touted as the best pitching prospect out of this draft, and they followed with him at 7. So, not to say that I expect him to be on the Carlos Rodon path, but that's great. That's really, really great. Unfortunately, you have to be able to score runs. You have to be able to get on base. You have to be able to execute the fundamentals, whether that's at defense at your position or it's in batting. And I don't see